Baal, in some traditions, is regarded as a powerful demon. This perspective largely derives from Judeo-Christian views, which regarded the Canaanite god Baal as a false deity and hence associated him with demonic forces. Do you love mythology stories? If you do, be sure to hit that like button and subscribe to Weird Mythology for weekly videos. Baal is sometimes considered a chief demon, often placed in high rank in Hell's hierarchy, an echo perhaps of his status as a major god in Canaanite religion. His portrayal varies, but he's often described as cunning and manipulative, using deception to lead humans astray. This demonization of Baal aligns with the biblical portrayal of foreign gods as false and malevolent, serving as a stark contrast to the monotheistic worship of the Israelites. This perspective is further solidified in Christian demonology, where Baal becomes synonymous with the devil or is seen as a high-ranking figure within the legion of demons. However, it's important to note that these demonizing views of Baal are specific to certain traditions and are not universally accepted across all cultures or religious beliefs. The ancient Canaanites, for instance, revered Baal as a powerful fertility and storm god, crucial to their livelihood and survival. Who was Baal in the Bible of the time of the Old Testament? Baal was a deity revered across Canaan and Phoenicia in ancient times. This worship seeped into Jewish religious practices during the Judges era, a period when Israelites turned away from their god to serve Baal and Asherah, Judges 3:7. This worship flourished during Ahab's reign, extending even to Judah. Baal was seen as a fertility god believed to bolster crop yields and increase human procreation. Various sects paid homage to Baal in diverse ways, reflecting his universal appeal. They stressed different aspects of Baal, leading to local versions of the deity such as Baal of Peor and Baal Berith, Numbers 25:3 and Judges 8:33. These regional manifestations were believed to govern agriculture, wildlife, and human fertility. Winning their favor was critical, particularly in areas with scarce water resources like Peor, where rain was unpredictable. Cults engaged in severe forms of worship like ritual prostitution and child sacrifice, Jeremiah 7 verse 9. Baal's imagery usually involved a helmet with bull horns symbolizing strength and fertility, and weapons symbolizing thunder and vegetation. He was esteemed as the supreme deity, outshining El, the chief Canaanite god, seen as feeble. Baal was revered as the sun god, the storm god with a lightning bolt, and a fertility god who gifted children. Worshipping Baal often involved sensual rituals in temples, including ritualistic prostitution and even human sacrifice, typically the firstborn of the person making the offering. Jeremiah 19 verse 5. The priests celebrated with wild rites featuring loud cries and self-harm. 1 Kings 18 verse 28. Despite the warning from God before the Hebrews entered the Promised Land, Deuteronomy 6 verses 14 to 15, Israel succumbed to idolatry. God confronted this through the prophet Elijah during Ahab and Jezebel's reign. The God versus Baal showdown occurred on Mount Carmel with a divine contest, a fire test for Baal and God. Baal, being a storm god, was expected to manifest fire but failed. Elijah then successfully invoked divine fire to consume the sacrifice, thereby demonstrating God's supremacy. Matthew 12 verse 27 refers to Satan as Beelzebub, suggesting a connection with the Philistine god. It's indicated that the Baals of the Old Testament were merely demons masquerading as gods, and thus idolatry equates to devil worship. 1 Corinthians 10 verse 20. Therefore, while Baal was widely worshipped, he was seen as a false god leading people away from the true God. There is a common confusion surrounding the differences between Baal and Beelzebub. Some cultures equate them as two separate entities of the same being, while others believe them as independent entities. It is fascinating how these two figures, Baal and Beelzebub, have different origins and functions, but their names become somewhat intertwined in certain contexts. Baal, as I mentioned earlier, was a major deity in the Canaanite pantheon. He was associated with fertility, weather, and war. In Canaanite mythology, Baal was the son of El, the chief god, and his consort Asherah. Baal was typically depicted as a vigorous young man with emblems of thunderstorms like a lightning bolt and fertility. On the other hand, Beelzebub or Beelzebub is a figure with origins somewhat distinct from Baal. The name Beelzebub is a derogatory term used in the Hebrew Bible, meaning Lord of the Flies. The term is a mocking alteration of the name of the Philistine god Baal-zebul, which means Baal the Prince or Lord of the High Place. Beelzebub was associated with uncleanliness or filth, hence the reference to flies. In the New Testament, Beelzebul is associated with Satan. In Matthew 12 verse 27, Jesus refers to Satan as Beelzebul, suggesting the demonization of this figure in the Christian tradition. While both Baal and Beelzebul have roots in ancient Near Eastern religions, they serve different functions. Baal is a Canaanite god associated with fertility, weather, and war. Beelzebul, on the other hand, is a derogatory term for the Philistine god and later associated with Satan in Christian tradition. Despite these differences, the names became somewhat conflated in certain contexts due to the similar origins and tendencies to demonize foreign gods in the Hebrew Bible. Now, onto the Gnostic belief of Baal. In Gnostic tradition, the understanding and interpretation of entities like Baal can be quite complex due to the multifaceted nature of Gnostic beliefs. Gnosticism encompasses a broad array of religious movements that emerged in the first few centuries CE, all characterized by a dualistic worldview where the material world is often seen as flawed or even evil, created by a lesser deity, while the spiritual world is perfect and is the domain of a true ultimate god. Baal, being a deity from pre-Christian polytheistic context, does not play a significant or direct role in most Gnostic systems as far as our current knowledge goes. However, there are aspects of Gnostic thought that may indirectly relate to him. Gnostic texts frequently reference the archons, powerful entities that serve the demiurge, the lesser god who crafted the physical world. Some Gnostic interpretations may equate entities like Baal with these archons, beings who govern the material world and keep human spirits trapped in the cycle of physical existence. However, this is an interpretation and not a direct reference to Baal in Gnostic texts. It's also worth noting that Gnosticism often repurposes figures from both the Old and New Testaments in novel ways, reinterpreting them to fit their dualistic cosmology. This reinterpretation can lead to traditional figures being cast in very different roles than they play in mainstream Judeo-Christian beliefs. While Baal is not a prominent figure in Gnostic teachings, some Gnostic principles may lend themselves to interpreting figures like Baal in unique ways. As always with Gnosticism, interpretations can vary widely between different sects and texts. Moving on to demonology, in Ars Goetia, which is the first section of the Lesser Key of Solomon, a famous grimoire, Baal, usually spelled B-A-E-L, is depicted as the first of the 72 spirits that King Solomon supposedly controlled. Baal is described as a king who rules in the east and has command over 66 legions of demons. He is portrayed with the ability to make those who summon him invisible and is known for his cunning and sly nature. His physical representation varies, demonstrating his transformative abilities. In the Goetic tradition, Baal is often depicted with 3 heads, a toad, a man, and a cat. He speaks in a hoarse voice, and he is also said to take on the form of a spider or a dog, according to different parts of the text. However, it should be noted that the Ars Goetia, its portrayal of Baal and the other spirits, is not part of mainstream religious texts or beliefs. It falls more into the realm of occult literature and practices dating back to the 17th century. Its interpretations of characters such as Baal are unique and not widely accepted or recognized outside of occult circles. How about ancient Egyptian belief? Was Baal present in the beliefs of the ancient Egyptians? The name Baal is not native to the Egyptian religious system. It is of Semitic origin and was commonly used in the ancient Near East to denote a regional or local deity. However, due to the considerable cultural exchange between Egypt and its Semitic neighbors, certain aspects of Baal worship did make their way into ancient Egypt. Baal was generally associated with the Canaanite storm god and was a powerful force. In Egypt, Baal was sometimes identified with the god Seth and deity of chaos, storms, and the desert. This syncretism or merging of deities occurred due to the similarities between Baal and Seth. Both were storm gods and both held somewhat ambiguous or challenging roles within their respective pantheons. However, Baal was not a central figure in the Egyptian pantheon, and his worship in Egypt was likely a localized phenomenon, perhaps more prevalent in areas with a high concentration of Canaanite or Semitic residents. It's also important to note that Baal was not a single god, but a title meaning lord or master, which could be applied to various gods in the ancient Near East. Therefore, different communities or religions might have had their own specific versions of Baal. So the Baal who was incorporated into Egyptian belief may not have been identical to the Baal worshipped in Canaan or Phoenicia. While Baal did have a presence in Egypt, he was primarily a Canaanite and Semitic deity, and his role in the Egyptian religious system was relatively minor and localized.